So you'll see a
Cool.
okay, so I'll let all the students in the room if that's okay, and then when Ariel comes, or Ariel will come, and we'll just get started.
Cool.
Okay,
Sounds good.
great. We have some students streaming in. Hi everyone, thanks for coming.
Hello.
Good afternoon. Hi everyone.
Hello. Just gonna give it a minute.
Well, thank you all for coming. I think we can get started shortly. My name's Paloma and I'm with Career and Professional Development, and we have some fantastic guests joining us today from Skydance Animation. So this is super exciting. We can't wait to connect and hear a little bit more. So a virtual round of applause, and I'll hand it over to Ann Whitney. Thanks.
Cool. So I am just getting up our deck, and then we'll get started. So let's see here. Great. How's everyone today? While I'm pulling this up. Maybe
Excellent.
before we start, does anyone in the chat, do you want to kind of tell us what you're specializing in or what your major is, just so we can kind of get a sense
That's a great
of
idea.
what you're wanting to get into in our audience? Don't all start at once.
I'm sure like all the chats will come through at one time.
All right, I'm gonna you guys are gonna see a little bit of a spoiler here. What is the brave soul in the chat? Oh, it's the career. Okay, so I'm gonna kick us off.
Storyboard. We got a storyboard.
Just letting you guys, just letting you know that Ariel's having some trouble logging on. Just kind of an FYI. All right.
Here they come.
Hey, look at it all.
Okay. So we're here to talk about Skydance Animation today. And we're super excited to chat with you at Art Center. We know you guys are super talented. And I know some of you might have signed up for our portfolio reviews tomorrow. So we're excited to meet a few of you there as well. So, okay, there we go. So my name is Ann Whitney McCombs. I'm the manager of talent acquisition here at Skydance Animation, and I'll let my colleagues introduce themselves. You guys want to kick it off?
So I'm.
Hi. Oh, Ariel's here.
Yes. Sorry, I was having somehow the link wasn't working for me, so I figured it out. Good to see everyone. So our boss, Robin McDonald, who's our VP of Talent Acquisition, is on a business trip at this time, but I am the director of talent acquisition. It's very nice to be here.
And I'm Christina. I'm one of the recruiters for our LA animation team.
I'm Laura and I'm the recruiting coordinator. I know my hair is a lot longer now, but I support these three.
And on this slide, so this is our Madrid team. And if you want to connect in with any of us, so you can connect with any of us on LinkedIn, but also try and find them because they're our counterparts and they're equally a part of the process and handle different roles from us. So kicking off today, we have a little bit of an agenda. So we're going to start with an overview of Skydance Animation, and then we're going to go into everything from our slate, our studio structure, and then of course how to connect with us. And then after our overview of Skydance, we're going to go into what we call breaking into the industry. And breaking into the industry is kind of your time to pick a recruiter's brain of how to literally break into the industry, but that's where we can answer career specific questions and just around questions as well. If you have any questions along the way about Skydance or anything that we're saying, please feel free to use that chat box. We'll definitely try and kind of keep an eye on it and then get to kind of questions at the end. So I am going to turn it over to my colleague, Christina, now.
Awesome, thank you. So we wanted to get started by talking about Skydance as an organization as a whole. So it was founded in 2010 by David Ellison, who's our CEO. And his vision was to establish a diversified media company to create high quality entertainment and engaging experiences for a global audience. So the company's first feature film was True Grit, and some of you may have seen that. It was directed by the Coen brothers, and it actually received 10 Academy Award nominations. So that was a pretty cool way to like kick us off out the gate. And since then, Skydance Media has acquired and expanded several franchises as well. So Mission Impossible, the recent Star Trek series, Terminator, and most recently, we released The Old Guard and Tomorrow War and Snake Eyes. So those have all been within the last year and a half or so. In 2013, the company launched Skydance Television, and so that was our second pillar. And that is focused on scripted content, and we've done shows like Grace and Frankie, which is on Netflix. And then recently we released Foundation, which is on Apple TV Plus. And that's based on the series by Isaac Asimov. So you can kind of see already, you know, features were sort of in a particular area. Television, Grace and Frankie to Foundation, very different. So we've got a different kind of spectrum of content out of TV. And then in 2015 is when our expansion grew with the acquisition of leading game developer to form Skydance Interactive. So we've recently released Walking Dead, Saints and Sinners, and it's a very cool like VR gaming experience. And so that's what they're focused on. And then last but not least, in 2017, David realized his lifelong passion of animation by launching Skydance Animation. And that's, of course, what we're here to talk about today. So we'll go to the next slide. And we've got, thank you, we've got our mission statement. So with all of those lines of business, there's the through line of our company mission statement. And so you can see that here. At Skydance, we are storytellers who embrace visionary artists and innovative technology with the goal of creating premium event-level content for audiences around the world. We are passionate about fostering a culture that encourages creativity to help shape where entertainment is headed. And then we've got our Skydance Animation vision statement. So for our team over here at Animation, we've got Skydance Animation, where imagination is being reimagined. We're a creative community dedicated to telling compelling stories for global audiences. We're using the power of animation to create memorable characters and explore immersive worlds across features, series, and shorts. And we're dedicated to the creative process and the exceptional talent behind it. So if we do it right, the stories we tell will last forever. So then we just wanted to talk a little bit about our leadership, who are the ones guiding this very ambitious mission of ours. So first we've got Holly Edwards. She is the president of animation. So Holly is an animation veteran, more than 20 years producing feature films and television. Prior to Skydance, Holly worked at DreamWorks Animation in both production and executive roles. And that was on films like Kung Fu Panda and Trolls and How to Train Your Dragon. So some pretty awesome stuff. And prior to DreamWorks, she actually produced both animated and live action projects for TV and digital platforms. And she was with Curious Pictures West, Wild Brain, and Colossal Pictures. So she's had a pretty amazing career. And then we have John Lasseter, who's the head of Skydance Animation. And previous to Skydance, John was the CCO at Walt Disney and Pixar Animation Studios. And he was also the principal creative advisor for Walt Disney Imagineering. And John made his directorial debut in 1995 with Toy Story, which is the world's first feature-length computer animated film. And he received a Special Achievement Academy Award. He also directed A Bug's Life, Toy Story 2, Cars, Cars 2, and he executive produced all of Pixar's features from Monsters, Inc. Up until his transition to Skydance. And then lastly, he served as executive producer of Walt Disney Animation Studios, producing films such as Tangled, Wreck-It Ralph, Moana, Frozen, Big Hero 6, and Zootopia. So we're very lucky to have them both leading the charge at Skydance Animation and what we're working on here.
Lots of credits for both of them.
Yeah.
And so thank you so much, Christina. I'd like to talk a little bit about the core values of our studio. And they all tie back to our mission statement. Our core values are all about helping to set the foundations for what we want our studio to be. And that's both in terms of content and in terms of culture. We are a creative-driven studio. We're betting on people, and we want to empower artists to tell their stories. We also believe in deep collaboration. As one example of the way in which we collaborate across the studio, we have internal working screenings of all of our projects. And we basically, what we're doing is we're treating the entire studio population as a kind of test audience. But more than that, we're giving each employee a chance to really weigh in on the success of our project. So we're going to have internal working screenings between 6 and 8 times before we release the film to a formal test audience and then to the world. And we want our employees to comment, like, what worked, what didn't work, the good, the bad, and the ugly. It gives our employees, from our current interns to our executives, the chance to serve as that test audience and give their input on the development and success of our projects. Our development team is also always interested in a great idea and believes that those ideas can come from anywhere and from anyone. So anyone that is at the studio has the opportunity to pitch to the development team. It's not limited only to people at the studio, but if you are at the studio, the development team is always happy to hear from you. Now, as far as the types of projects that we're looking to tell, they have to have an emotional core. But what we mean with emotional core is this is that clear why. Like, why does this story need to be told? And with our stories, we don't believe in pandering to an idea of what we think our audience can handle. All too often, content for children sort of panders to a baseline idea of what kids can handle emotionally or intellectually. And with our films, we're going to be asking not just the children, but also the adults in our audience to stretch emotionally and intellectually. But of course, beyond all of that, we really just want them to have a very, very good time watching our shows. We also want our projects to be impactful. We have, as storytellers, a social and cultural responsibility, and we are deeply, deeply committed to research and to sparking a dialogue. Our studio actually has an inclusion trust represented by employees from across the studio that provide valuable feedback for our productions, with the aim being to help maintain the authenticity of the diverse voices in all of our projects. So the Inclusion Trust, for instance, will take a look at character design, stories, dialogue, background characters, locations, to make sure that we are representing that in the representation of our world and our characters, we are reflecting the communities that will be watching and enjoying our content. Beyond that, we also want to be boldly original. I mean, we're taking big swings on fresh ideas, and we'll focus on creating new franchises and adapting unique IP. So while most of our content that we're working on right now is completely original, has never been seen before in any format, there are some projects that we are adapting, but when we look to adapt, we're looking for work that, whether it's a book or a graphic novel or whatever the case may be, we're looking for something that is boldly original in its own way, and can add to the originality of our original IP. So for example, our first series, which is titled Wandla, is adapted from the extremely successful young adult fantasy fiction book series, The Search for Wandla by Tony DiTerlizzi. And as mentioned earlier, all of our feature projects right now are original ideas. We're also going to create immersive worlds. And we really want to use the power of animation to transport the audience. When our audience sees our worlds for the first time, like you're seeing this incredible kingdom that was designed for our second feature up on the screen right now. Whenever we have that establishing shot of a new world, we want the audience to be inspired and to think, oh my gosh, I have to go there. To finish, who better to talk about our studio than our own employees? And so what I'm going to do right now is I'm just going to read off a few of the quotes of people who have been working at Skydance and what they have to say about the studio. We'll start with Andrea Minozzi. Andrea works at our location in Madrid, and he says, "I love the fact that we're developing stories with strong positive messages, taking advantage of the impact that cinema has on people to bring good to the world." Moving on, we have Anna Lencioni. Anna is one of our rock stars in our Los Angeles division, and she says, "At Skydance Animation, we take our social responsibility very seriously. Our goal is to portray the world and its people in a way that makes everyone feel like a main character, and to broaden people's perspective in a way that feels natural and entertaining." And lastly, we have a quote from Sarah McDonald, who is also on our Madrid team. And she says, "Everyone at Skydance Animation, regardless of their position, is encouraged to share their ideas. And more importantly, people listen. We are all taken seriously, and this attitude embodies the company ethos." And she's absolutely right on that front. We really, our executives do listen. There isn't that hierarchy that you so often see. Everybody gets a voice at the table.
Thanks, Ariel. So now that you've seen some cool art and kind of our core values on all of our projects, we're going to talk about the projects that kind of embody them. So as kind of Christina said, we're a newer studio or newer branch of Skydance. And our first project that is actually out now, so hopefully some of you have seen it, is called Blush. And it's on Apple TV Plus, and it's directed by Joe Mateo. And just a little summary, Blush is about an astronaut stranded on a mini planet, and he faces impossible odds when suddenly a newcomer crashes into his life and brings something the lone traveler never expected: love. Then in spring 2022, so hopefully all of you get to see it, our first feature film will release, Luck. It's directed by Peggy Holmes, and it's about when the unluckiest girl in the world stumbles into the secret realm of good and bad luck, she must unite the magical creatures to uncover a force more powerful than luck itself to save the day. Closely following Luck is our second feature film, Spellbound, and that's directed by Vicki Jensen. And Spellbound is the story of a young princess who must set off on a dangerous quest to break a spell that has split her kingdom and her family in two. And then we have this mystery slate here. There's not a lot on it, but we do have a rest of a slate. So in 2023, we have movie 3 coming out. And we have our first series, which we mentioned earlier, Wandla. And just something to mention, because you see series 1 and 2 on here, is we want our series to feel like feature films, that they couldn't just fit in kind of that 90-minute window that we've been allotted to, which means that we're going to have high production quality and storytelling that has a beginning and end. And so Wandla is just kind of the first stint of that. And then in 2024, we have our second series and movie 4 in the works. And of course, there's going to be much more to come. So next year, maybe we'll have more mystery slate on here. But yeah, that's our slate. And then what better way to kind of kick it off than to watch our trailer for Blush. Now, we know Zoom videos are shaky or sketchy, so you can always view it on YouTube if it's not working for you when I play it. Now follow that, Christina.
I was just gonna say, I'm like, oh great, and now I get to follow that by talking about structure. So we wanted to just tell you guys a little bit more about how animation breaks down. So as we've talked about a little bit already, we do have 2 locations. So one location is in Los Angeles, California, and in LA is where we're going to focus primarily on pre-production. So where our stories are getting started. And LA is also where our TV series pipeline is located. Our other location is Madrid, Spain. And Madrid is the larger entity. And that's where most of the feature production pipeline is actually going to take place. So, you know, for artists, art and story is based in Los Angeles. Once something moves into 3D, then it's in Madrid. So just to break it down even further, we actually just have this little list here of you know, typical departments where we'll, you know, have jobs and where they're located. So you'll see kind of that breakdown happen between the 2, but of course there's some overlap too, you know, things like production. That's needed anywhere with any team, is the production support, you know, bringing them along the pipeline. So there's a little bit of overlap, but for the most part, you can kind of see how that delineation happens between the pre-production and then once it actually gets into CG. So for jobs that you know, you might be interested in those different departments, in those different locations, we do have our career site listed here. So you can find all current openings there, and also on our LinkedIn as well. So the 2 are connected so that that's where you're going to find the most up-to-date live job postings. And also feel free to connect with us on LinkedIn too. And Ann Whitney had mentioned it earlier, you know, feel free to connect with our Madrid recruiters as well. Maybe some of you are interested in departments that live with their team in Spain. So that's what we got.
So at this juncture, we'd like to pivot a little bit and open it up to questions. So please feel free to either unmute yourselves and ask your questions, or to drop your questions in the chat. If you are dropping them in the chat, please be patient with us. We're going to try to get to as many as we can. The thing that we want to talk about now is we definitely want to answer any questions that you have about Skydance, kind of following up on what we just presented to you. Additionally, we really want to give all of you sort of a healthy understanding of what it takes to actually break into this industry. And we want to attack it from a slightly different angle than you might usually hear it from. So oftentimes you'll hear from artists, you'll hear from craftsmen who are really, really great at what they do, and they're going to teach you what it takes to put together that perfect portfolio. Whether you want to be an editor or a biz dev artist or a CG artist or a story artist, whatever the case may be, animator, we have a slightly different angle that we'd like to take because we've identified a pain point that oftentimes isn't discussed enough before someone actually tries to enter the workforce, which is what is the actual game that you're playing when you're trying to get a job? So some of the questions we want to address are, how do you actually send an email that gets a response? How do you network in the most effective way? Who do you network with? How do you follow up on a job application so that you stand out from the crowd, so that it doesn't just feel like you're applying into this black hole that you never hear from again, right? So how do you keep your calm in an interview? This and more are things that we would love to discuss with you. So please, if you have questions about Skydance, we're happy to answer those. And then we'd also really love to discuss any topics that interest you about breaking into the industry. So would really love it if a brave soul out there can take the plunge and ask us the first question.
I'm stopping my share.
All right, and Amanda is asking, could you talk about a perfect portfolio website layout? How do you generally scan what do you generally scan for in a portfolio? So Amanda, the answer to your question, and if you want to unmute yourself, we can have a conversation about it. What are you focusing on? Are we talking, because it's going to be very different if we're talking about storyboards, if we're talking about visual development, if we're talking about animation, character modeling, what are you focusing on? Or if you...
Oh, I can see Amanda unmuting. Amanda's our director in CPD, so I think it's more on behalf of the students.
Okay,
Yeah,
got
hi
it.
Ariel. I just wanted more of a comment on how long you actually spend looking at a portfolio, because I know that you generally scan them pretty quickly. So
Yeah.
what are you, as soon as you open up that website, what are you looking for? How long do you spend on it? What do you want to see?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So a visual development or say character modeling, environment modeling portfolio, we're going to go through very, very quickly because those are sort of still images that we can very quickly kind of appraise and determine, is this right for the project for which we're currently staffing. We really aren't using, is this good or is this bad as a part of our lexicon, but really, is it appropriate for the project that we're staffing? So I don't know, if I click a portfolio open, if it's not hitting the mark, I'll probably move on from it within 10 seconds or so, 10 to 20 seconds. If it is hitting the mark, I might sit with it for a long time. But usually within 10 to 20 seconds, I have an understanding of, if it's not there, then I'll move on to the next thing. With a storyboard portfolio or an animation portfolio, those you actually have to read through the story, sequence, and probably a couple of them. With animation, you are going to want to watch the clip. Same thing with an animatic. So with those, we're probably, we're prepared to dedicate, 3 to 5 minutes to each portfolio. So we're obviously going to take a bit longer on that. But as far as what we're looking for, I think I can sum it up. And then I would also love to hear from Ann Whitney and Christina and Laura. But I think I can sum it up with a bit of a life hack that I kind of recommend to artists, which is the best way to sort of ascertain if your portfolio is taking you in the direction that you want to be heading in is pick a project that is representative of the kind of work that you want to be doing, right? So for example, maybe you just watched Pixar's Luca and you're like, oh my gosh, I would have killed to have been a visual development artist or a character designer on Luca, right? So the best thing I can recommend that you do to see if your portfolio is in the right place to be getting you jobs on projects like Luca is look up Luca on IMDb. If I'm assuming everybody knows what that is, but I also know it's not safe to assume. So Internet Movie Database, imdb.com, great resource for just any and most information that you might want to find on the various films and television shows that are out there. So you can look up the credits. So go find Luca on imdb.com. look at the list of credits and see who did the job that you wish you had done on that project, right? So say you want to be a character designer, visual development artist. Well, make a short list based on the list on IMDb of who was credited with designing the characters on that project, and then go and Google their portfolios, And one of the things that'll be really exciting is you'll find that, let's say 5 or 6 different character designers worked on Luca. They're going to have 5 or 6 very, very different, portfolios. You don't have to fit one mold. Now, what you're going to want to do is peel the onion back a little bit and probe a little bit deeper and say, okay, now they all have very different styles. All these artists have their own voices, but there is going to be some consistency as far as quality, as far as presentation, that you're going to start noticing, like, okay, there's a professionalism to all of this work. Or they're all leaning in if they're working on Luca, then they probably have a really healthy mix of being able to indulge in some degree of cartooniness and caricature while still keeping anatomy and musculature and the skeletal structure a little bit more grounded in realism, right? If you're going to go for Nickelodeon, SpongeBob SquarePants, you're going to get a lot of noodly arms that kind of remind you of olive oil from Popeye, right? But for Pixar, Disney, DreamWorks films, and certainly Skydance, I think we're sort of in that mold as well. You're going to want to kind of strike that appealing balance between something that still has a degree of caricature, but is also something that can be modeled and turned in a volumetric kind of way. So whatever projects you want to work on, maybe your dream is to work on a Nickelodeon project or a Cartoon Network project or on The Simpsons or whatever the case may be, I would say find what really floats your boat, look that up, find who's working on it and doing the job that you want to be doing, and then really study their portfolios and their presentation. We're not looking for you to just copy the artists that are already out there. The thing that excites us about the artists that are working, about any artist, is, oh my gosh, this person has such a fresh voice. Like, why do we appreciate art just as a culture in the world? Like, why do we appreciate art? It's because somebody has a fresh take on the world, on representing the world. And that's the same, that still holds true for animation artists. We really want you to have that fresh take, but of course it still has to fit in with a kind of production model. It still has to be something that can be translated into production work. I would say the main distinction between being a fine artist and a production artist is, as a fine artist, your art is the end product, right? It's there to be, framed, hung on a wall in a gallery, and for people to come sip wine and appreciate it and talk about how brilliant you are. Whereas in animation, it's more of a collaborative assembly line kind of process. And so your artwork, while it is of course art, but it serves a function, which is, it's kind of like the blueprint for the next person on the assembly line to be able to do his or her job. And so your art has to be both art, but it also has to inform the next step of production. So that's the other thing that we're going to be looking for is, do you have a healthy understanding of what your art, of the purpose that your art is serving? If you're working on a 2D show, it has to be teeing up the animator to be able to do his or her job. If it's on a CG show, you really have to be informing the character modelers, the surfacing artists, the riggers on their part of the job in the breakdowns of your art. If you're a story artist, you have to be informing the animators, the previs team, about how they're going to direct the camera and the acting and all that. So, Anne, Whitney, Christina, Laura, anything to add to that?
Adding to the portfolio structure, Ariel mentioned 20 to 30 seconds for some of you VisDev modelers folks, and I'm sure you've heard this from all your professors, but it's putting that best work on top and then thinking about what the studio is and what you're applying to. So with, for example, storyboards, SpongeBob is a very certain type of storyboard, and then like A Legend of Korra is a very certain type of storyboard. So what are you going to put in that top storyboard that the recruiter is going to see? And Maybe if you're going for more of a cinematic or feature quality, you're going to put things in there that have more camera shots. For Viz Dev, if you're applying for a character designer, you're going to want to put your best character designs at the top of your portfolio. The other thing that I'll say too is if you're like multi-talented and want to apply to different things at one studio, you can tailor your application. So like link your storyboard like tab. Don't have it all on one page. Like link it to the storyboard tab. So that's the first thing that they click on. Link it to your Viz Dev tabs. That's the first thing that people click on so that you can really steer the person in the right direction. So you know that you're getting the right thing across, instead of having like not just recruiters, but like production managers, art directors, they're all guilty of that too. So just like an FYI, just steer people in the right direction, make it a little bit easier.
Just to bounce off of that, can I ask a question? Hi, I'm Vivek.
Hi, Vivek. Yes, please.
So how is it more likely for you guys to hire somebody who's a specialist at one thing, or a slightly more versatile artist who's able to adapt with and work with other, people in different departments?
It depends on the production and the position, and then the team. So like some teams will have their specialists and they'll balance them out with more of a generalist, or someone's great at multiple things. And we're going to use all those skill sets. It's really kind of what they're looking for. The one thing though, is when people are generalists and doing multiple things, it's important to showcase those things. Sometimes like there'll be one page where like you'll have a really great this tab, but then the other page is a little bit lacking. And so it's kind of figuring out, people might assume because you have more in one area that you are trying to get into that kind of section. So just kind of balancing the portfolio so that each page that you're showcasing is stand out for itself as well. Ariel, I'm sure you might have something to add to that.
Yeah, it's, various studios, as Ann Whitney was saying, are looking for different things. If you're working at a smaller studio, they might be looking for you to wear multiple hats and therefore be looking for more of a generalist. Bigger studios, feature studios such as ours are, going to be looking for more of a specialist. But I go back to what Ann Whitney was saying as far as the portfolio advice. If you are that generalist, it does help to separate your work on your website, but not by project, but by specialization. So often artists will be organizing their work almost like it's an art of book, where it's like, here's my project, and here are the beat boards and the full storyboards and the character designs and the environment designs and the models that I built, and it's all in one place. And that's really interesting just from an art appreciation standpoint. And if it were an art of book, I'd be flipping through it going, that's awesome. But the reality is that in the limited time that we have, as Amanda, when she raised the question, sort of highlighted, we do try to go through it very quickly. And as we're working on typically a very specific task. And so we're looking for that character modeler, right? So, and if we have to weed through all of your storyboards, however brilliant they may be, that's not relevant to us in the moment. And then in the short amount of time that we have, we're just not going to get to see as much of the work that's relevant to the job in question. So that's why I would say, if you want to be that generalist and a specialist, you can be both. So again, if you're applying to a studio that is looking for a generalist, take them to the home page, and then what they'll do is they'll click around to all your various specialized tabs. If you're applying to a studio that's looking for a specialized role, then, as Ann Whitney said, just send the link to your to that specific tab. And if any of that work is under NDA and you have it password protected, please make sure that password is living on your resume. You can trust the professionals in this industry. I'll speak for literally every recruiter that's out there. We will never, ever share the work that you have entrusted to us with a password with anyone other than the hiring teams. And the members of our hiring teams also know that if this is password protected, it means it is only available to their eyes for the purposes of reviewing your portfolio and not for the purposes of sharing with anyone else. So you can rest assured that any work that you choose to share will be kept to as limited an audience as is needed to be able to consider you for the job.
Good point, Ariel. To the password, recruiters use a system called an applicant tracking system, and a lot more people have been linking their password, like they'll log in themselves and then link with the password embedded, and that actually cuts out the link. Like the link doesn't work for us in the back end. So please, you put it on your like resume or a short little blurb in the application where like your cover letter will be, because it's always a bummer when the link is broken and we'll Google and then like your portfolio is fully password protected. Just like an FYI. So
yeah. And if we're seeing enough of your work through other avenues like your Instagram or your ArtStation or whatever, that it's whetted our appetite, and then we'll reach out to you to confirm the password or the correct link. But often we're moving pretty quickly, and we'll sometimes have hundreds of links to go through. And so sometimes a link that's broken or not working, we'll just move on to the next one. And there's a chance we'll return to yours. It's not like we're moving on and saying, well, screw that applicant, like we're not going to return to them. It's just that we'll reserve it for the end when we have time. But by that point, we may have already found someone who's working. And I believe in giving everybody like a cold dose of reality, not to be mean, but because I wish when I was starting out as an artist, I started as an artist before becoming a recruiter, and I made every mistake in the book. And so there are things I wish somebody had told me. So the thing that I want all of you to know is that it's not that we are moving on from your work and without the intention of returning. It's just that our job, while it's a big perk of our jobs to hold to hold the door open and say, welcome aboard to the studio or welcome into our industry, that's a perk of our jobs, but it's not actually what we get paid to do. What we get paid to do is to satisfy the staffing needs of our hiring teams. And more often than not, candidates think that our job is to help them make their careers come to fruition. And again, I'll underscore, that's a perk of our jobs. We love being able to do that. But at the end of the day, given a choice between filling a role with a candidate whose link was working and then going back and taking extra time to double check a link that's not working, we just may not have time to do it. And it's not our obligation to do it. So just, make sure that your links are working and that your password is on your resume.
So we have 2 questions in the chat, and I'm going to put Laura on the spot for this next one because she is like a little master at it. So how did you start making connections in the industry? And Laura, you mind teeing us off there?
I was gonna jump in anyway. So I did the bulk of my networking during the pandemic and this virtual world. And so it was like September of last year. I just graduated from college in May. And so it was like September. I was like, I don't know what I want to do. I know I want to be in entertainment, but I don't know where. And I figured that the easiest way to just kind of narrow it down, just like weed out what I don't want to do, is to just start meeting people in the industry. So LinkedIn is going to be your best friend. Even if you are an artist and maybe you don't have everything, maybe you don't have your LinkedIn all updated, it's just the easiest way to reach out to people and hopefully get a response back. And how I started that is I reached out to alums from my university. So you can do that by going to like your school's LinkedIn page, and then there's like a literal button that says alumni. And then I just started going through that and just reaching out to people and being very specific in what I wanted from them. Even though you only have 300 characters, you'll make it work. And so, excuse me, I ended up reaching out to tons of people. And then once I got more confident, I broadened and I reached out to people who weren't alum and just people where I'm like, I want to do what they do one day. And then I actually ended up having an informational meeting with Christina and Ann Whitney when they were both at separate studios. Ariel only just added me back on LinkedIn a few days ago. So not to
Wow,
put out there
Ariel.
after
Wow.
working here 6 months,
That's
but it's
hilarious.
okay. But yeah,
Way to throw me under the bus.
but yeah, like Christine and Ann Whitney and several other recruiters and just people in animation just really convinced me, I guess, that this is where I want to be. And so that's what I would say is just the easiest way, I guess, is just reaching out to people on LinkedIn and being strategic about it. And if you leave a good impression on them, they're going to say, hey, I have this person that would, that I think would be great for you to meet with. I had that happen several times and that was really beneficial for me. So when you go into an informational, make sure you have like tons of questions for them. I actually kind of treated it like I was interviewing them just because I'm like, I want to know as much about you as I can, just for learning. So yeah, that's my advice.
And I'll just add to that, and because that was really, really great. And I'll just add to that and say that I love what Laura said about that she was interviewing, kind of treating it like she was interviewing the people that were giving her their time. Because look, we're all sometimes people wonder like why aren't recruiters getting back to me? And why I feel like I'm always chasing them. And the reality is that there are very successful working artists that have been around for a while, and our job is to chase down them and to chase down you. And so sometimes while you're chasing us, we might be chasing someone who's already got a little bit more experience, etc. We have networks that are already formed. We have friendships, we have colleagues, we have artists that have some reputation. But we all start somewhere, right? And so I think what Laura was really hitting on is that essentially before you ask anything of somebody, you want to foster and develop that relationship first, because we already have other relationships that we've already invested time in. And so if someone's going to be asking me a favor and it's between somebody I don't know at all and somebody that I've worked with and have a good rapport with, I'm probably going to, do the favor for the person that's, that I've known for a little while, because I know their expertise. I can trust their reliability as an employee. And if in those first interactions with a recruiter or somebody who's a craftsman in your specialization, if before making your first ask of somebody, you take a few meetings to really just develop a relationship with that person, then by the time you make an ask, you make some requests, they're going to be that much more willing to give something to you, because they'll be like, oh, well, I know this person, right? Relationship building is, if it's anything at all, it's an investment of time. And what that means is you really can't cut corners. You can cut corners on a lot of things. You can figure out a way to discover and create every hotkey for Photoshop possible. But where you really can't cut corners is in the building of the relationship, because that's an investment of time. So invest that time up front, so that by the time you're actually asking a favor from somebody or asking them to do something that can help you out, they already have some sort of affinity for you. That's great, Laura. Thank you.
Utilize your art center network because you have some great professionals working for you. So please. And then next question is, do you offer internship opportunities? Christina?
Yes, we do. We do. We're currently running a fall internship right now. I will say, due to the pandemic and work from home, it's a little bit smaller than usual, but we are fortunate to still be able to have that opportunity with a handful of students across our organization. So more often than not, what you're going to see is opportunities in creative development. So we're really talking about, you know, the pre-production side of things. So with the development team that is bringing in new projects and reading scripts and doing research, and working with the creative teams on the different projects that we already have in-house. And so we have those opportunities with animation. We also have those opportunities with our live action team. And we also do a digital marketing internship as well. So, you know, if you're interested in that sort of more social media kind of side of marketing, that's a really cool opportunity as well. So we do internships every spring, every summer, and every fall. Right now it's virtual. And it is the way it's currently set up is you do have to be a student at the time of internship. So that's just important to know, you know, if you're kind of coming up on graduation, is that you do have to be a student currently enrolled. Because I know that many, if not everyone here, really kind of leans towards the artistic side. We are working on developing an art internship program. We are hoping that maybe this summer we can make that a reality. I think it's going to, you know, largely depend on return to office, because for an art, you know, for more of like a viz dev storyboard internship, we'd love to have it really be like a classroom setting, bring you in every day and really, you know, working with people within our studio on those, you know, skill sets and projects. So more information on that to come, but that's what we have currently and what we're kind of hoping for future semesters as well.
We have time, I think, for one, maybe two more questions. So if anybody's got, you know, anything about Skydance, about breaking into the industry, please feel free to either drop it into the chat or unmute yourselves and ask. We're here for you.
I actually had a question.
Yeah.
So I like doing like earlier development sketches, and I don't really do like finalized images. I have a few, but mostly the work that I like to do is just developing a certain like I guess like props and stuff. So I was wondering how you guys actually view that in a portfolio instead of like final images.
So at the beginning of your career, you might expect to be tasked with taking a design all the way throughout the process. If you're in-house in a studio, you will probably be expected to, whether you're focusing on characters or on props or environments, to probably take a design from early iterations and conceptualization through to more realized designs, cleaning it up, and then really breaking it down so that it is production ready for the character modelers, the prop modelers, the technical directors who are going to build the rigs so that they can do their work. If you feel very strongly about staying on that very front early end, then you're probably going to have a career that's more consulting. Usually those jobs that are just that one piece of the puzzle. Usually that's not what we hire for when we're hiring full time, but we do often, quite often. I would actually say we hire more freelancers, and this is true of most studios, that we'll hire, you know, if we have like 1/3 of the character designers on our project will be full-time, you know, in-house, and 2/3 will be, you know, shorter term freelancers who come on for a few weeks or a few months. But some people make a full career of just doing, you know, that early conceptualization work, but usually it's not the in-house position. Usually it's more of a freelancing position. And so you might consider kind of structuring your career that way.
Okay, thank you.
That being said, lean into your strengths. We'll balance out a team if someone's like great at those early concepts versus color. It's just what Ariel was kind of getting at is it's a shorter part of the timeline in a production, and that's just something that you're gonna accept in your career.
Yeah, I also don't want you to walk away thinking that you would never have an in-house position. I'll fully back up what Ann Whitney just said. We do look for a well-rounded team. If we've hired a person to be a character designer on one project, we don't need a second person with that exact same skill set, right? We do look for a well-rounded team as opposed to a well-rounded individual. If we can get a well-rounded individual, that's obviously great too, but you can be more of a specialist. I just wanted to sort of manage your expectations as far as what to expect. Some studios will say, yeah, that's great. We can hire this person in-house and we're just going to have Vanessa bounce around from project to project doing the front end part of the designs. And some studios will say, well, we'll just hire Vanessa on for a contract position for a number of weeks.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. I think we have time for one more question. Anybody else?
I just have a few questions. I mean, I just don't know what's happening tomorrow. You guys said like the internship portfolio review. Could you explain what's happening where?
I'll follow up with you separately. Vivek.
Okay, thank you. All right. Yeah.
Any last questions before we have to end?
And you guys were talking about like making connections on LinkedIn. Like when you say reach out to people, like what are you doing? Are you asking them questions? Like obviously you're not immediately like, hey, can I have an internship at your company? Like you have to be like, what are you like saying to them that doesn't make it seem like you're trying to get something from them?
Yeah, you can. First thing I'd recommend is whenever you're reaching out to somebody who's working in the industry, assume that they have very little time and that their emails are what they get to at the end of their day when they're done with everything else. Because I know Christina and Whitney, Laura, and I can all vouch for that being the case. Like we get through our workday and then we spend another 2 hours at the end of it going through our emails, and we typically get a lot of them. So I would say keep your email to a length where I can't tell you exactly how long it'll be. That'll be affected by the substance of it, but something that can be ingested in 30 to 60 seconds and no longer than that. So if you have a question, I would say start with one question as opposed to multiple questions, because one question may be frustratingly limiting. You may say, gosh, but I have 3 questions I want to ask, but start with one. And then if we can get through an email quickly, because if I open up an email and it's pages long, I'm going to set it aside again with the intention of getting back to it, but Lord knows if that's going to happen or not, at least in a timely fashion. But if it's a short email that I can read quickly and I can send you a quick response to that one question, then you can follow up with the next email and we'll start this volley going back and forth. And through that volley, you'll be able to get all of your questions answered, but they won't be answered if you ask them all at once. So you can just ask a question like, hey, I just applied for this position and I just wanted to follow up with my resume attached, and here's a link to my work and my password, just for your ease, right? And so that I can stand out from the crowd. So something like that. If you see a position, you may not see a position still. You can say like, hey, I'm interested in character design. I didn't see a position open, but in case something's coming down the pike, I wanted to send you an email. Or you can just say, would love to connect if you ever have the time to, talk about the business. I'm just getting my start. And if, here's a link to my work, and would love to get any tips and tricks. So I guess you are technically asking for something, but it's low hanging fruit, right? You're just asking for a conversation. You're just asking for a little bit of time. And then, be patient. Sometimes a response might come right away. Sometimes it might come in a week. I would say if it's been a week and you haven't heard back, send a polite reminder in that thread. Most of the time, we're not trying to ignore anybody. We maybe just missed an email. We're only human. Sometimes it got buried. And I'll speak for myself. I'd certainly thrive on reminders. And so long as they're politely worded, so long as it's not like, hey, I never heard back from you, but just, hey, I'm sure you're busy. Just wanted to knock this back to the top of your inbox. I thrive on reminders. And Whitney, Christina, Laura, anything to add?
I was just going to say, there was something Laura said earlier about, it was something about like being like targeted and like thoughtful is, also just kind of keep in mind that, you also, it might be low hanging fruit, but you also don't want it to be a complete throwaway, like asking like, hey, like what jobs do you have currently open? that's something that you could Google our website, and find the careers page. So, just also have I would just say, like, be a little thoughtful in the question or the thing that you're asking.
And I know we're at time, so I'll make this quick. But when it comes to LinkedIn messages, which I'm not sure if that's exactly, I think it was what you're talking about, but because it's so short, I really tried to target, I'll mention like a company they've worked for. Like, I really am inspired by your work at this company. And so it inspired me to reach out. Do you have 15 minutes of your time? So I can talk to you about your career path. Being on this side of it now, I get a lot of messages that are like, can I tell you why I'd be perfect for this job? Or like, can you tell me a little bit more about this job? It's like, you can read that in the job description. And I think it's a lot more impactful if you're more interested in the person that you're talking to. Like Ariel was saying, like building that relationship, than just saying like, than just talking about yourself the whole time. Yeah. And also, when you're sending a LinkedIn request, something that I was taught in school was that do not send LinkedIn requests without a message attached to them, because you're going to get it's going to be a much higher chance that someone's going to add you back if you have like a little message just saying like, hey, like I saw your LinkedIn. I really want to work at your company one day, like hope to connect, than just to add nothing.
I can back that up right now. Earlier today, I was going through LinkedIn. I had a bunch of requests to connect, and it's not that I'm not clicking connect with people who don't have a message, but when I see that someone has a message, it draws the eye, and I'm like, okay, what does this person have to say? And by the time I'm done reading it, I know a little bit more about that person. I'm like, oh, okay, well, sure. And I like to honor the fact that person took the time to send that message. One other thing I'll add is, sometimes you're applying for a job and you want to follow up with the recruiter, but you don't know, you're like, okay, I applied for this production assistant job at Skydance, and there's Ariel, there's Christina, there's Ann Whitney, there's Laura, there's their boss, Robin. I have no idea which recruiter is actually overseeing this position. And then we have other branches of our company. You'll see other recruiters associated with the Skydance brand. You're at a loss. The truth is, Ann Whitney was talking earlier about the ATS, the applicant tracking system. The reality is it really doesn't matter which recruiter you reach out to, because you're never going to know. You have no way of knowing who is in charge of which position. But all you have to do is just send that email to the one whose email address you have. And usually it's pretty easy to figure out what the email alias conventions are for one company or another. Just, I'll get an email. Hey, Ariel, I'd applied for this production assistant position. Here's my resume attached. And I'll go, oh, well, I'm not in charge of the production assistant positions, but I know Christina is. So let me quickly go in and see what position this is and confirm that it is in fact Christina's position. And then once I've done that through the applicant tracking system, I then just forward that email on to Christina, and I'll say, hey, Christina, this person reached out. It looks like this is more under your purview. And so your email will get forwarded in the right direction. Recruiters, I've never seen a recruiter look at an email and go delete. It'd be the weirdest recruiter who would do that. So usually we get into our line of work because we really do enjoy helping candidates out. And so if I'm not the right recruiter, I'll forward it on to the one who is.
Okay. Well, I don't know did you have any last thoughts, Ann Whitney?
No, I was going to say we've hit time. Amanda asked about social, and the answer is yes. Social media is super important, and just use your free tools. That's it.
Okay, well, thank you so much. You hit on so many good things, and I really hope all the students got a lot out of it. So let's give a virtual round of applause. And thank you so much for this hour. We really appreciate your time. And anyone, so any students, if you have questions, I'm sorry, I was siren in the background, reach out to us at careers at Art Center so we can follow up with you, but you can always come to us for advising sessions. So thank you again, Skydance Animation. We really appreciate your time and hope to connect soon.
Thank you all. Have a great afternoon.
Everyone.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.